The biggest lie Hollywood ever sold families was simple: a rating means safety. The 1980s proved that lie again and again. Films marketed as harmless slipped past censors, then scarred audiences worldwide. Some were cut, some were restricted, others were quietly buried. What you are about to see is not nostalgia, it is a system failure. Number 15. Poltergeist, 1982. This looks like a harmless suburban ghost story. A smiling family, a quiet home, a playful spirit that moves chairs across the kitchen floor. That is how it begins. That is how it tricks you, because what unfolds next feels less like entertainment and more like a slow invasion of childhood safety itself. This was rated for general audiences in many regions, yet parents walked out shaken. Children left theaters in tears. Something clearly went wrong between intention and impact. The film crosses a line that most family horror never dares approach. It puts a child at the center of pure terror, not suggestive fear, not implied danger, but direct supernatural assault. The infamous scene of the clown doll, the television whispering in the dark, the image of a child trapped in another world calling for help. These moments were too intense for a rating system that had not yet evolved. Some countries demanded cuts, others restricted screenings, and many quietly questioned how this ever passed as suitable viewing for younger audiences. The truth is simple. This film exposed a flaw in the system. It proved that tone matters more than labels. You can remove blood and still create trauma. You can avoid explicit violence and still leave a lasting scar. And that is exactly what happened here. This was not just a horror film, it was a turning point. A moment when audiences realized that PG did not mean safe anymore. Number 14. Gremlins, 1984. This begins like a Christmas fairy tale, a small town glowing with lights, a strange gift wrapped in mystery, a set of simple rules that feel almost playful. Do not feed it after midnight. Keep it away from water. Keep it safe. It sounds harmless. It sounds like something made for children. That illusion lasts just long enough to pull the audience in before everything collapses into chaos. What follows is not gentle fantasy. It is pure, controlled mayhem. Creatures multiply. Smiles turn into snarls. The tone shifts from warmth to destruction in a matter of minutes. Scenes of violence unfold with a strange mix of humor and cruelty that confused audiences at the time. Parents expected something light. Instead, they found a film that gleefully tears apart the idea of holiday comfort. The infamous kitchen sequence alone pushed boundaries far beyond what a PG label suggested. The backlash was immediate. Viewers complained. Critics questioned the rating system. Some regions demanded edits while others issued warnings. But the real impact went deeper. This film became one of the primary reasons a new category was created. The birth of the PG-13 rating can be traced directly to experiences like this, a moment where the industry had to admit that something existed between harmless fun and adult horror. What makes this film powerful is not just its content, it is the betrayal of expectation. It invites you in with innocence, then reveals something far darker underneath. And once that shift happens, there is no going back. Number 13. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, 1984. This was supposed to be adventure, a thrilling escape into exotic lands where danger feels exciting but never truly threatening. That was the promise. That was the brand. Audiences walked in expecting another heroic ride with charm and spectacle. What they found instead was something far darker, something that felt closer to nightmare than adventure. The shift happens without warning. One moment there is humor and energy. The next moment the film drags you into a world of ritual, sacrifice, and human suffering. The infamous heart removal scene does not suggest horror, it shows it. A man is held down. His chest is opened. His heart is pulled out while it is still beating. For a film carrying a relatively mild rating, this was shocking. It crossed a psychological line that many viewers were not prepared for, especially younger audiences who came in expecting light entertainment. Beyond that moment, the film keeps pushing. Children are enslaved. Darkness dominates entire sequences. The tone refuses to return to safety. This was not just one disturbing scene. It was an entire film built on unease. Some countries responded with cuts. Others imposed restrictions. But the real reaction came from the public. Parents complained. Critics questioned how this was allowed under existing ratings. And once again, the system had to adapt. This film stood alongside others of its time as proof that something was broken, that a simple label could no longer define emotional impact. Because this was not just adventure, it was fear hidden behind spectacle. And once you saw it, you could not unsee it. Number 12. The Never-Ending Story, 1984. The film presents itself as pure imagination. A child escapes reality through a magical book. A land of fantasy opens before him. Creatures of wonder fill the screen. It feels safe. It feels like the kind of story designed to comfort young viewers. But beneath that surface lies something unexpectedly devastating. The turning point is quiet, yet brutal. A horse sinks into a swamp. There is no villain forcing the moment, no dramatic explosion, just slow despair. The creature gives up. It stops fighting, and it disappears into the darkness while a child screams in helpless grief. This scene alone left a lasting mark on an entire generation, not because of violence but because of emotional weight. It introduced loss in its rawest form, without escape, without relief. Many regions began to question whether this belonged in children's programming. Some broadcasters issued warnings, others restricted airings, because the film did something unusual. It treated young audiences as if they could handle existential fear, the idea of nothingness consuming a world, the idea that sadness itself can destroy everything. These are not simple themes. They linger. They stay with you long after the credits end. What makes this film controversial is not what it shows, but what it makes you feel. It strips away comfort and replaces it with truth. That loss is real. That hope can disappear. And that sometimes stories do not protect you from pain. They introduce you to it. Number 11. Return to Oz, 1985. Nothing prepares you for how unsettling this film becomes. It carries the legacy of a beloved fantasy world, yet strips away its warmth almost immediately. Dorothy is no longer in a colorful dream. She is in a cold reality where even adults seem threatening. The opening alone sets a disturbing tone. A child is taken to receive electric shock treatment. That image alone was enough to alarm parents who expected something magical. Once the story moves back into Oz, the nightmare deepens. The land feels broken. Empty corridors replace vibrant landscapes. The infamous Wheelers roll through scenes like creatures from a fever dream. Their movements are unnatural. Their laughter feels wrong. Then comes the moment that defines the film's reputation. A hall filled with severed heads, each one alive, each one whispering. It is not graphic in a traditional sense, yet it is deeply disturbing on a psychological level. Several countries reacted cautiously. Some limited its exposure, while others criticized its tone. Families who entered expecting a safe continuation of a classic instead faced something closer to horror. The film never reassures the audience. It keeps pushing deeper into unease until even its hopeful moments feel fragile. What makes this experience unforgettable is how it corrupts nostalgia. A world once associated with comfort becomes a place of fear. It proves that imagination can be twisted into something haunting without ever relying on explicit violence. And that contrast is what left such a lasting impact. Number 10. The Dark Crystal, 1982. At first, it looks like a technical marvel, intricate puppetry, beautiful design, a fully realized fantasy world built from scratch. Yet, beneath that craftsmanship lies something deeply unsettling. The creatures are not friendly guides. They are strange. They are fragile. They feel almost alien. And that discomfort grows with every passing scene. The villains alone push the film into darker territory. The Skeksis are grotesque both in appearance and behavior. Their movements are decaying. Their voices echo with cruelty. Watching them interact feels like observing something unnatural, something that should not exist. Unlike traditional fantasy antagonists, they are not charming. They are disturbing to look at and even harder to understand. Violence appears in subtle ways, yet it carries weight. The draining of life essence, the slow decay of characters, the constant presence of death in a world that looks magical. These elements create a tone that feels closer to dread than adventure. Some audiences struggled with this contrast. Parents who expected light fantasy found themselves questioning whether it was suitable for children at all. Reactions varied across regions. While not always officially banned, the film faced criticism and hesitation. Because it challenged expectations, it proved that you can build a beautiful world and still fill it with unease. The result is something unforgettable. A film that does not scare through shock but through atmosphere. A quiet, lingering discomfort that never fully fades. Number 9. The Secret of NIMH, 1982. Animation usually signals safety, bright colors, gentle music, simple lessons. That expectation works like a shield. It lowers your guard, and that is exactly why this film hits so hard, because it refuses to follow those rules. It looks like a children's story, yet carries a tone filled with fear and loss. The journey of a small mother trying to save her child should feel comforting. Instead, it feels desperate. Every step forward comes with danger. The world around her is not kind. It is filled with threats that feel real. Predators are not softened. Death is not hidden. When characters face violence, it is presented with weight and consequence. There is no quick escape from fear. Certain sequences stand out for their intensity. Dark environments swallow entire scenes. Shadows dominate the screen. The presence of experimentation and suffering adds another layer of discomfort. These ideas go beyond simple storytelling. They introduce themes that many viewers were not prepared for, especially within an animated format. Reactions at the time reflected that tension. Some praised its depth, others questioned its place among family films. It was not widely banned, yet it faced hesitation in distribution and broadcast, because it blurred a line that animation rarely crossed. What remains powerful about this film is its honesty. It does not protect the viewer from harsh realities. It invites them to confront fear through the eyes of something small and vulnerable. And that perspective makes every moment feel more intense. Number 8. Something Wicked. This Way Comes, 1983. A carnival arrives in the middle of the night. That image alone should feel magical. Lights, music, laughter, drifting through empty streets. Yet something about it feels wrong from the very beginning. There is a sense that this is not entertainment. It is a trap. The story unfolds slowly, but the tension never releases. The leader of the carnival offers dreams, wishes fulfilled, regrets erased. But every gift comes with a cost. That idea alone pushes the film into darker territory. It turns desire into danger. It suggests that wanting something deeply can destroy you. For younger audiences, this concept felt unsettling. It replaced fantasy with moral dread. Visually, the film avoids bright comfort. Shadows dominate the scenes. Faces appear distorted under dim light. Moments that should feel wondrous instead carry a sense of unease. Even the pacing contributes to the discomfort. It does not rush to reassure. It lingers on fear. It allows tension to build without release. Some regions responded with caution. The film did not fit neatly into family categories. It felt too intense, too psychological, too quiet in its horror. That ambiguity made it difficult to classify and harder to market. What gives this film lasting impact is its theme. It does not rely on monsters alone. It focuses on the human fear of regret and temptation. And by doing that, it creates something more disturbing than simple horror. It creates a feeling that stays with you long after the story ends. Number 7. The Beyond, 1981. No comforting illusion exists here, no soft entry point. The film opens like a descent already in progress. You are not invited in. You are dropped into something rotten and unforgiving. What unfolds feels less like a story and more like a slow exposure to decay. Scenes do not build toward horror. They exist inside it. Violence appears suddenly and lingers longer than expected. Eyes are attacked. Faces are destroyed. Bodies break down in ways that feel excessive, even for its time. The camera does not turn away. It observes. It forces the viewer to stay present in moments that most films would cut short. That refusal created immediate backlash. Several countries moved to ban or heavily censor the film. It was labeled obscene not because of one moment, but because of its relentless tone. Narrative structure almost dissolves as the film progresses. Logic becomes secondary. Atmosphere takes control. A sense of doom spreads through every frame. The ending offers no relief. It traps both characters and audience in a space where escape feels impossible. That decision alone separates it from conventional horror. There is no victory. There is only continuation of suffering. What makes this film disturbing is not just the gore, it is the absence of hope. It strips away resolution and replaces it with finality. And that is far more unsettling than any single image, because once it ends, the feeling does not. Number 6. Cannibal Ferox, 1981. Few films triggered as much immediate outrage as this one. It did not aim to entertain in a traditional sense. It aimed to provoke, to test limits, and it succeeded in ways that alarmed censorship boards across multiple countries. The premise appears simple. A group ventures into the jungle. They search for truth. What they find instead is brutality stripped of restraint. Violence is not stylized. It is presented in a raw and confrontational manner. Scenes involving torture push far beyond comfort. The inclusion of real animal cruelty intensified the backlash. It transformed the film from controversial to unacceptable in the eyes of many authorities. Bans followed quickly. Cuts were demanded. Distribution became restricted. The film gained a reputation that extended beyond cinema. It became a symbol of excess, a line that should not have been crossed. Audiences were divided. Some viewed it as exploitation without purpose. Others saw it as a harsh reflection of human behavior. What remains undeniable is its impact. It forced a conversation about boundaries, about what should be shown and what should be left unseen. It challenged the idea that shock alone could justify storytelling. This is not a film that hides behind metaphor. It confronts directly, and that confrontation is what made it so difficult to ignore and even harder to accept. Number 5. Maniac, 1980. Forget distance. Forget safety. This film places you uncomfortably close to something deeply broken. There is no heroic lens, no moral cushion. The camera follows a disturbed mind as it moves through the city, not as a monster in the shadows, but as a presence that feels real and immediate. That choice alone unsettled audiences in a way few films had done before. Violence here is not stylized, it is abrupt and personal. The infamous opening sequence sets the tone without hesitation. A moment that shocks not just because of what happens, but because of how it is shown. The camera does not look away. It lingers. It forces you to experience the act from a perspective that feels invasive. That approach sparked immediate controversy. Several countries banned or heavily cut the film. Critics debated whether it crossed into something irresponsible. Beyond the violence lies something even more disturbing. The psychological portrait. Loneliness twists into obsession. Identity fractures into something unrecognizable. The film does not justify its subject, yet it refuses to simplify him. That complexity makes it harder to dismiss. It feels too close to reality, too grounded. What gives this film lasting impact is its refusal to provide comfort. There is no safe distance between viewer and subject. You are placed inside the experience whether you want it or not, and once that boundary is crossed, the unease becomes impossible to escape. Number 4. The Prowler, 1981. A quiet town, a familiar setting, a standard premise. On the surface, it looks like another entry in a growing genre. A masked figure, a series of attacks, a mystery waiting to be solved. Yet what separates this film is not the structure. It is the execution. The violence arrives with a level of realism that shocked audiences at the time. Effects are detailed, impact is prolonged. Moments that would normally pass quickly are extended just enough to become uncomfortable. One particular sequence involving a sharp weapon became infamous, not for its concept but for how convincingly it was portrayed. It felt less like fiction and more like something disturbingly tangible. Censorship boards took notice. Edits were demanded in several regions. Some versions were trimmed to reduce intensity. Others faced distribution challenges. The film developed a reputation that extended beyond its narrative. It became associated with a level of realism that many considered excessive. Atmosphere plays a crucial role as well. Silence stretches between events. Tension builds slowly. The film does not rely on constant action. It creates anticipation, then disrupts it with sudden brutality. That rhythm keeps the viewer unsettled. What makes this film endure is its precision. It understands exactly how much to show and when to show it. That control turns simple ideas into moments that linger far longer than expected. Number 3. Nekromantik, 1987. No disguise exists here, no attempt to soften the experience. From its opening moments, the film signals exactly what it intends to explore, and that intention alone was enough to trigger bans across multiple countries. Distribution was restricted almost immediately. Authorities did not see it as conventional horror, they saw it as something far more confrontational. The narrative centers on obsession, pushed beyond accepted boundaries. Death is not treated with distance or reverence, it becomes part of daily existence. That concept alone unsettled audiences, but it is the way the film presents it that caused outrage. Scenes linger, silence replaces explanation. The camera observes without judgment, which makes the experience even more uncomfortable. There is no guiding voice telling you how to react. You are left alone with what you see. Censorship boards responded aggressively. Cuts were demanded. Screenings were halted. In some regions, possession itself became a legal issue. The film gained notoriety not through marketing, but through restriction. The more it was suppressed, the more it drew attention. What makes this film disturbing is not just its subject, it is its detachment. It refuses to frame events as shocking spectacle. It presents them as routine. That normalization is what unsettles the viewer the most, because it removes the barrier between fiction and discomfort. And once that barrier is gone, the experience becomes difficult to process or forget. Number 2. Anthropophagus, 1980. Isolation defines this experience. A remote location. A sense of abandonment. A group that slowly realizes escape may not be possible. The setup feels familiar, yet what follows takes a far more disturbing direction than expected. The central figure is not a typical antagonist. He is something degraded, something stripped of humanity. His presence is felt long before it is fully revealed. That slow introduction builds tension in a way that feels almost suffocating. When violence finally arrives, it does not feel exaggerated. It feels raw and deliberate. One particular sequence became infamous for its extremity. It crossed a line that many believed should not be crossed on screen. Reactions were immediate. The film was placed on banned lists in several countries. Distribution faced heavy restrictions. It became part of a wider conversation about exploitation cinema and its limits. Critics argued that it existed purely to shock. Supporters claimed it reflected deeper fears about survival and collapse. What gives this film its lasting reputation is the atmosphere it creates. Silence dominates large sections. Movement feels slow and inevitable. There is a sense that events are unfolding towards something unavoidable. That inevitability creates tension that does not rely on constant action. In the end, the film leaves behind a feeling of discomfort that goes beyond individual scenes. It lingers because it suggests that under certain conditions, humanity itself can disappear. Number 1. Cannibal Apocalypse, 1980. War never really ends in this film. It follows its survivors home. Quiet streets replace battlefields, yet the damage continues to spread. At first, it feels like a psychological drama about trauma. Soldiers return carrying memories they cannot escape. But something else is growing beneath that surface. Something physical, something far more dangerous. The idea alone was enough to alarm audiences. Cannibalism tied directly to war trauma created a disturbing blend of realism and horror. Violence does not erupt immediately. It builds slowly through behavior, through unease, through subtle signs that something is wrong. When it finally breaks through, it feels shocking, not just for its brutality, but for its context. These are not monsters from another world. They are people shaped by experiences they cannot control. Censorship boards reacted strongly. Several regions imposed restrictions while others demanded cuts to reduce the intensity. The film was seen as pushing boundaries in a way that felt too close to reality. It blurred the line between psychological damage and physical horror. That combination made it difficult to classify and even harder to accept. What makes this film stand out is its theme. It suggests that violence does not stay confined to the battlefield. It follows individuals into everyday life. It transforms them. And that idea is far more unsettling than any single scene, because it connects horror to reality in a way that feels uncomfortably possible. So the next time a label tells you something is safe, remember this list. These films broke rules and exposed the truth. Ratings can mislead. Impact cannot. If this surprised you, then there are more hidden stories waiting to be uncovered.